Hello and welcome to Boobs and Dicks Smash the Matriarchy. I am Mad Cat, and with me always is Vanessa.
Hello?
A little slow there, Vanessa.
Sorry.
And welcome to our wonderful show where, well, we discuss boobs and dicks and the matriarchy, but mostly the boobs. The boobs is good. And we have a very special show today. We have a special guest, Brian Martinez. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. I am well, and I guess for anybody who's watching that is wondering why the fuck is there a dog on this show, and who is he and why should I care? My name is Brian, and no, not the one from Family Guy, and also I work at Honey Badger Radio. I help them put together the post-production for a lot of their shows, and I host some of them. So that's why I guess if it matters. I also have opinions and stuff.
Yes.
Now, don't you also have like a website sort of thingy?
Yes, I'm also independent of that. A comic artist, and I have a website where my webcomic is hosted, thanks to Matt Cat. It's goodguycomic.com. I am also on the getting close to finishing issue number 3 on that, and I have a personal website with my artwork that you'll find a link to via goodguycomic.com. It's just brianmartinezillustrations.com. I think that's everything.
Well, other than being a very sexy man, I think people need to know that. Or so I've been told. I don't think I've actually seen a picture of you before.
Well, I do okay. Let's put it that way.
All right, so we have a great show ahead of us today. Let me give a small introduction before I let Brian go off. Basically, it's about Captain America. Now, a few days ago, I released a video about the idea of giving Captain America a boyfriend, which, if you saw my video, I basically traced that all the way back to Gandalf. Not Gandalf. God, what's the other one's name?
Dumbledore.
Thank you. I can't believe I forgot Dumbledore. This is what I get for not being a Harry Potter fan.
I was going to say that. I was like, really?
I traced this all the way back to Dumbledore and the whole issue of he was gay and the LGBT community was angry about this. And if you're curious how I did that, please check out that video. But to the conversation today, it seems as of late, especially since Civil War came out, which was a fantastic movie, there has been this social justice warrior push to destroy Captain America. First, we had the issue about, oh, he's hyper-masculine and he's straight, and somehow that's offensive. Then there was the issue of, hey, let's give him a boyfriend, because for some reason that made sense to people. And now we have a new comic book out about how Captain America, this whole entire time, was a secret agent of Hydra. And to discuss this, I'm going to hand it over to Brian to enlighten us further.
Okay. So, it would appear that Captain America, in the comics, was the thing that he had spent his entire life fighting for 75 years and defeating and thwarting for 75 years. He was a member of them the entire time, which already sounds ridiculous. So, but it's a really stupid move, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. When you're writing fiction, and let's say there's a difference between writing something that is uniquely yours and then something where you're sort of asked to take the helm, and write for something that's an established property, right? So J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter's her baby. She can do whatever she wants with it. If she decides that Dumbledore is gay, no one's really going to take issue unless it just doesn't make sense in the continuity of the story, assuming that that's what she wants to do, because it is hers at the end of the day. But if she does something that is completely antithetical to everything that she had built, regardless of whether it's her property or not, I think that fans will justifiably be upset, right? Like, if suddenly Harry Potter came out and said, you know, Dumbledore is not, I mean, not Dumbledore, Voldemort's not such a bad guy, and I want to be his friend or whatever, then people are going to say, whoa, 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 that doesn't make any sense. And that's basically the main issue that most people have with this change of Captain America. And the reason why I brought up the difference between something that is owned by the creator and something that is sort of handed to people is that comic books are a unique case when it comes to writing, because specifically like these long-running sort of serialized superhero comics, because when they were made, you know, the goal was that unlike stories like other sort of comic stories like Mao's or many manga slash anime stuff that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and usually like the whole thing ends within an arc. Comics like the Marvel and DC types and many others that are similar, they're not intended to end. They're intended to keep going and going and going, right? They're supposed to run forever, essentially, is what the publishers hope for, because obviously it'll make them money, but it's also because, you know, every time you get to a certain point, you have like a new young generation of people, of comic readers, that want to read about these heroes that their parents loved and their grandparents loved and so on. It's sort of like, it's essentially, and I've always said this about superhero comics especially, superhero comics are modern mythology. They are, you know, when the ancient Greeks used to tell each other stories about the gods, that was their entertainment. It was also kind of their religion, but the thing is about the gods is, the Greek gods and stuff, it wasn't treated, their religion wasn't treated the same way like our sort of Abrahamic, you know, Christian religion is treated. Back then, the gods represented both something that you were revering and you were sort of giving credit to when you saw things you couldn't explain in the real world, but they also served as entertainment, so you could just tell stories about, you know, the Trojan War or whatever, and these great deeds and terrible deeds done by the gods and the demigods and so on. But basically, in the modern day, we have a separation between like fantasy and religion. So instead, I think that superheroes represent a modern mythology. So they're basically like, oh, you know, these ideals, and that's really the root of all of it. Like the earliest superheroes, like Superman, who's the first superhero, is essentially based on feats like Hercules, right? Essentially, it's like that. It's supposed to be larger than life. It's supposed to be impressive, and it's a big deal, and there's a bit of escapism in it and all that. And as they evolved, they would add more characters and try to find new ways to make it interesting. Even the Flash, the original Flash, his look was made to resemble that of Hermes or Mercury, the god, the messenger god. That was on purpose. Wonder Woman is from an island of Amazons and is related to the gods herself. So yeah, it is knit in there. So when you have these books that are meant to run for very long periods of time, over the course of decades, and the hope often is that it would never end, you got to hand the reins off to different writers, because, you know, one writer's or artist is not going to want to or be able to do the books for as long as the characters have been around. Captain America's been around for 75 years. So they handed the reins off on Captain America to this man named Nick Spencer. And Nick Spencer thought it would be a great idea to have Captain America's story be that he was a Hydra agent the entire time. So I bring this up because when you're handing off the reins to a new writer, sometimes those writers they may not be familiar with the material. or they're going to bring their own belief system into what they're doing. As an example, when Stan Lee was writing the X-Men, when they first came out, like in the 1960s, it didn't do that well, actually. The X-Men comics were not a hit right off the bat. He was actually kind of running out of ideas, and that's where he came up with the concept of mutants, because he was unable to come up with some new way to give people powers, so he just decided that there was something genetic happening, and they were just called mutants. And so when people think of the X-Men, they don't really think of the run that Stan Lee himself had done, which was the original run. But rather, most of the time, people are more so attached to the stuff that Chris Claremont did when he was writing it. And when Chris Claremont was writing the X-Men, he was doing things that were more like, was a bit of a soap opera. So there was love triangles between the characters and, stuff going on besides the giant threats and the action and everything. He was bringing something really human to it, and that was what a lot of people really loved about the X-Men. There was something, it was different and it was special from the other Marvel properties because it was written in a different way. It was almost like, the Breakfast Club with superpowers, right? And it was probably on purpose. Like, he's probably inspired by, these sorts of properties. But at the end of the day, Chris Claremont always stayed true to the core of what the X-Men was. He didn't forget that. And he actually added to it and made it, better and fleshed it out more. But Nick Spencer didn't appear to know much about the character of Captain America, because what instead he seemed to do was bring his politics into it. And this is what I learned when I looked at an interview between, I believe it was Time magazine, which I thought it was weird that Time would spend time talking about Captain America, but I guess when in the information age, you just got to constantly have articles. Are you guys still there? Because it's been so quiet. I feel like am I talking just... Okay, yeah, you guys are still there.
Yeah, we're still here.
All right.
You're on a roll. Don't want to stop.
All right. In the information age, you have to keep putting out articles. So it would make sense that Time would do it in that context. But I thought it was odd anyway that Time magazine spent time talking to a guy who worked at Marvel Comics with Nick Spencer. But at the end of the day, what I learned was Nick Spencer, the writer of this Captain America comic that threw this in, was a very politically charged person. Like, he was very involved with politics. And in fact, the guy who he spoke to I believe was an editor or something, said that he felt that Nick Spencer would be best for the job because he seemed to know more about politics than anyone else there. And he was very involved and he was very active. But what it would appear is that just because someone is more involved does not necessarily mean that they are more informed. It just means that they're more passionate. And you only need to look as far as your Facebook feed to see what I mean. Suddenly, as the election grows closer, all of your friends are political scientists, and they know all about every issue and every discussion that's going on, and they know what's best, and none of them really agree. And Nick Spencer is one of these people. He tried to get into politics as a member of the Progressive Charter Party. He is a progressive, or regressive, as I would like to call it. And he failed at that. And he also, so the writing wasn't even his first choice. Writing comics wasn't even his first choice. He wanted to write political material. He wanted to write op-ed book-type pieces. But he couldn't succeed at those things, so he's doing comics. And when he was given the reins to do Captain America, he saw an opportunity to essentially paint what he thinks is really going on in the world. So,
I want to interrupt you for a moment, because
go
I
ahead.
had a thought that, Nick Spencer kind of reminds me of Yulin Boll, that he takes other intellectual properties and is like, okay, people love Blood Rain. People love Dungeon Siege. I fucking love Dungeon Siege until
The game is good. The movie is awful.
The movie is awful. Anyways, you and Bull took all of these intellectual properties because they were fan favorites. People loved these things. And then said, I'm going to tell a different story. And produced what he wanted. And this is why he's so hated by nerds everywhere, is he basically hijacked people's love. And I feel like Nick Spencer did the same thing.
Yeah, so it would seem to me, sorry, my camera just died. That's why my dog is staring off. I don't know what he's doing. It would seem to me that this is what I think happened with Nick Spencer and Uwe Boll. Or not Uwe Boll, but Nick Spencer specifically. Marvel's been trying new things. And when you've been doing comics for a long time, trying new things can be dangerous. Because sometimes people don't want change. They're resistant to it. I don't think that you can't try new things. But I think that when you do, you have to be really smart about it. And you have to do it for the right reasons. So when they recently changed Thor into a woman, a lot of people took umbrage to it. And not just men, but women too. A lot of people who have been reading the comics for a long time saw that the change was unnecessary. And they had a lot of valid criticisms. It wasn't simply, I don't like women in my comics, because that's a ridiculously stupid argument since women have been in comics since the 1940s. So nobody's making that argument, because there is no argument there. I mean, that's dumb. Nobody's saying that. I mean, I'm sure there are some assholes somewhere saying that, but that's not the prevailing argument against female Thor. But Marvel doubled down. They doubled down and they said, the people who criticize this are bad people. And we're going to show that by writing the stories, showing, essentially, throwing a tantrum. Sorry that there's a siren there. Throwing a tantrum in the books against the folks that have criticisms by telling them that they're misogynist for feeling this way. And of course, that's a lazy way, and it's not really an argument against it, but this is the way that they operate. When they changed Iceman to make him gay, same thing happened. People said, wait, no, that historically makes no sense. He's never been that way. This feels like pandering. Why are you doing this? There are already gay characters, or you can make a new gay character. Why are you taking the established, extremely popular one and then changing that person, just like you did with Thor? And of course, again, they threw a tantrum. The writers went after people for making the criticism in the first place. Didn't even recognize the fact that the very existence of the X-Men and the very premise of what they are already includes homosexuality as part of its sort of umbrella storytelling, device, right? It includes it, but it's not limited to it. By making Iceman gay and making... In fact, I believe in the Iceman thing, the fact that he was gay and that he was trying to stay in the closet was more important to him than being a mutant was. That didn't make sense to me. Nobody thinks gay people are capable of mass murder in the same way that they think mutants are in the comic universe. But for whatever reason, I think his name is Bobby. Is that the Iceman? Yeah. He thought
Bobby Drake.
Yeah, Bobby Drake. He was like, well, I'm okay with letting people know I'm a mutant, but I'll be damned if they find out I'm gay, because that's what I'm really worried about. There are no Sentinels coming for gay people. That's a stupid. It's so dumb.
Actually, there were Sentinels. They were like tie-dyed and hot pink Sentinels.
So they were gay Sentinels?
Yes.
So, okay. Well, that seems odd. I guess that's how you lure them in. They were like leather men, leather Sentinels.
Oh yeah. Well,
okay,
I want to take a quick thing to add to what you're saying right now from the chat. Celtic Rune Singer stated Doge. Also, there was the Queen of Hell comic too, which was by Nick Spencer, and I believe that there was some criticism for that because it really adhered to feminism. And I thought I saw a quote somewhere about that, but I can't find it.
Unsolicited opinions on Israel?
Was there?
No, is it Angela, Queen of Hell, right? That's the unsolicited
I believe so.
opinions on Israel comic. That's we talked about that one. There's a bit where I believe this is the one where Angela and Sith go to hell, and supposedly I guess they're fighting the undead down there or something. And one of the guys that they come up against is Bor, and Bor is Odin's father. So he's sort of like what you would call a primordial or precursor god, kind of like Kronos would be in the Greek gods, you know? And so he's like Odin's father, and they actually addressed him as the patriarch of the Norse gods. And he was, for whatever reason, the way that they had him speaking was they were breaking the fourth wall. They would block out what he was actually saying, and instead they would put in things like red pill, red pill language, misogynist filth, and unsolicited opinions on Israel. And that was so incredibly dumb for a ton of reasons. First off, when you break the fourth wall in comics, you want to do it to certain characters. Like Deadpool can do it, and She-Hulk can do it. That was part of their whole shtick. Yeah, She-Hulk was doing that before Deadpool was.
And the Joker.
And the Joker can do it too, sure. And
I
Harley
just
can do
watched
it.
Deadpool for the first time yesterday.
Yeah? Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. Yes.
It's good.
It was
It's good.
Awesome.
I like it better than Civil War, but Civil War is a very close second.
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh no, Civil War is the best comic book movie to date. Although I did love Deadpool, but holy crap. But yeah, if you're gonna do it, you do it well. But the way this guy did it, it doesn't make any sense. It like implies that Bor, the ancient primordial Norse god of the gods, the father of Odin, spends his time in hell on Reddit. And that doesn't make any sense for him to have these opinions. He's on Reddit and poll, and that doesn't make any sense. So, no, that's just dumb. And you can tell it's just this hand-fisted attempt to double down on people's criticisms. And nobody was even criticizing Angela, Queen of Hell. Like, nobody cared. It probably wasn't even doing well in sales. But there was also the Korean Hulk, which was something that people were bothered by. But I think the other thing was, and this is where I'm getting to the Captain America bit. They killed Captain America, Steve Rogers, and then they replaced him with Sam Wilson, the Falcon, and they gave him the shield. And people were complaining about the fact that they did that, and I was one of them. But I have a really good reason for it. I don't care that you kill Captain America, because I know that in the world of comics, nobody stays dead, right? I don't necessarily think that it's like, the most clever way of shaking things up. It's kind of played out. I would have tried something different. That's not making Cap a Hydra agent, but maybe just trying something else. But I think that the writers of today are not as good as the writers of yesterday. I just patently believe that they're just not as good in terms of coming up with ideas. But the Sam Wilson Cap thing, where I take issue with it, and it's important that I try to clarify this, the Falcon was never Captain America's sidekick. He was his friend. He was actually one of his best friends, his closest friends, especially after Captain America comes to the modern world. Like in the 40s, he was teamed up with Bucky, and they were best friends. After he gets frozen and wakes up, he makes friends with the Avengers, sure, but when he meets the Falcon and they start doing things together, those guys become best friends. The Falcon is Captain America's equal in every way, meaning that he sees him as a peer, not as a ward, okay? The people who wrote this into the Falcon thought that the Falcon was always in the shadow of Captain America, and therefore, by giving him the shield, he was raising him up to the same level of Captain America. That's what the people who gave him the shield were thinking when they did it. That means that not only do they not understand the relationship between Falcon and Captain America, the only reason why Captain America is more popular is because he's older, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's better. It's like, some people might find, I don't know, like, Naruto more popular than, say, my favorite anime, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But that doesn't mean that Naruto is a better property. It just means that more people like it. But that doesn't mean that I need to tear down Naruto to lift up what I like, or just anything else that you might find that's sort of analogous to what I'm saying.
Let me throw a couple of things at you, Brian.
Okay.
Because I'm not a big comic book fan, but I love the stories. And one of the channels I watch on YouTube a lot is Comics Explained. Because, I like hearing about all the stories. So a couple of stories come to mind while you're talking. For instance, there was a time where Robin, the character who played Robin, who later became Nightwing, took on the mantle of Batman. And you're talking about how Falcon, took over for Captain America, and there was a time where Robin, Dick Grayson, I wanted to say Burt Ward for the longest time, that was the person who played Robin.
Sure.
Dick Grayson did take on the mantle of Batman for a while, but of course it eventually went back to Bruce Wayne. I'm kind of curious about how the fans reacted to that and how that compares to Captain America and the Falcon. But a second thing I want to throw at you is the retconning of Bucky Barnes. Because at first, Bucky Barnes was just a sidekick. He was a kid, for some reason, in the middle of World War II, helping out Captain America. And he always seemed like, the happy-go-lucky kid. But then later, when they were trying to design the Winter Soldier, they went back and said that he was actually a master assassin, which is completely retconning what the actual character was. And people seem to like it. And it seems, and believe me, I'm furious about Captain America being a Hydra agent, but it doesn't seem, with taking Bucky Barnes as an example, that extreme of a thing, since we can just retcon characters all the time. So I know I threw a lot at you, but
Okay,
what are your thoughts?
Let's go one at a time. All right, so Dick Grayson taking over for Bruce Wayne, and of course, when Bruce Wayne got his back broken, I think there was a time where there was a guy named Azrael that was also Batman for a while. I think that people coped with it, but there's something else to point out. Around the time that those things were happening, we didn't have the internet, right? So you couldn't really get a feel for what people's opinions were about that as much. But I would guess that if they did do that, there would be a lot of people that would have a problem with it. I think they would. I think that there would be a loud minority at least, and that's what I would think. So with the Falcon thing, I think there is that, but the difference is this too. Robin was indeed Batman's sidekick. Nightwing is more popular than Robin is, and one of the reasons why is because it's Dick Grayson going off and doing his own thing as an adult. Like, instead of, if we're going to say that a sidekick lives under the shadow of their mentor, then the cool thing to see in terms of character development is that character coming into his own and then going off and doing his own thing. So Nightwing going off and doing his own thing is one of the reasons why Dick Grayson, who is Nightwing now, is probably most people's favorite Robin, because he actually went off and grew up and did something else. And that's followed by Tim Drake, who is, I believe, the current Robin. But with Cap and Falcon, the relationship was not sidekick and mentor. It was a team. They were a pair. So, but what I get is it's not necessarily the fact that Falcon took up the mantle and used the shield. It's the idea that the people who wrote that in thought that everyone in the comics industry and the readers believed that Falcon was somehow less than Cap and that he needed to be lifted up. And it was probably, in the eyes of the people who did that, had something to do with race. So when they said, we're going to make him Captain America, they thought they were lifting him up. But the fact is, he didn't need lifting up because Falcon was already a great character. In fact, I mean, not that this is entirely related, but if you guys have watched the films that Anthony Mackie is in, where he plays the Falcon, he is one of the best things about those movies because he brings so much. He's just great. I mean, he's hilarious. He's charming. He's the shit in those movies. And this is something that, because we just did a show, which I'm going to upload on Wednesday, where we talked about Mockingbird, who was a character that was an Avenger for a long time and had no powers. She just basically fought, okay? She just knew how to fight, and she had like a stick. That was all she was. And they obsessed in the book about her not having powers as though it was a sexist thing. I'm not fucking kidding you, but you'll see it on Wednesday when we upload it. HoneyBadgerBrigade.com. Anyway.
Nice name dropping there. Perfect.
But the thing about it is when you have a character that's running around with a bunch of other people and that person has no powers, you can't not be impressed by that. Falcon has never been a guy with powers. He was just a dude that could fly, and yet he was cool. And that's not easy to do, you know. So in the movies, he's super cool. So I don't get why don't people see that that's not a dismissal or a diminishing of the character. But when you say we need to give him a shield and make him Captain America to make him even, to put him on an even playing field with other people, it's actually a very it's a very dismissive statement. It's basically it's what I call the soft bigotry of low expectations. It's the idea that if I didn't give you this shield and make you Captain America, you would be somehow less than the guy who was Captain America. Now that you're a better man. I have improved you. I have bequeathed upon you the shield of freedom, and now you are an equal.
So let's jump to the point I made about Bucky Barnes being retcon.
Yeah.
He could be a part of Hydra as a Winter Soldier.
Well, Bucky, I never liked the fact that they brought him back. I always thought that it's sort of like the Red Hood in Batman 2, right? I always thought that the death of Bucky Barnes was pivotal and important to shaping the Captain America character in the same way that the death of the second Robin was pivotal to the development of Batman, in the same way that the death of Gwen Stacy was pivotal to the development of Spider-Man. All these things are really important. However, that being said, I never liked the Winter Soldier character until I saw the movie. And I did like him a lot. It's hard to dislike him. But there is a part of me that still wonders if it couldn't have been handled in a different way, just because the potential for good character development is lost. I always... Okay, so why is... But that's what I feel. Like, personally, I don't think they should have brought him back. Even though I like him, I don't think they should have brought him back. But now that they have, I find that it doesn't necessarily make sense like that Cap would be a Hydra agent, although it would make sense that Bucky would, because there is enough. If you think about like the way that things work on the timeline, you know, Bucky supposedly died but didn't. The Russians found him. They gave him the mechanical arm, and then over time they brainwashed him and put him in the, you know, as part of Hydra's Winter Soldier program or whatever. Meanwhile, while all that is happening, and this stuff takes a long time, Cap is just frozen. He's a capsicle for basically the entire time. So, and then he wakes up in the, you know, in the comics, I guess, in the 1960s, and he joins the team. I don't know that you could work in how he could have done that. But I actually, did you look at the comic that led up to him revealing himself to be Hydra? The comic itself? Because they actually retconned some...
Captain America?
Yeah, the Captain America comic.
I read about... Again, I don't read comics.
Right.
I read about basically how they did it, and correct me if I get anything wrong, but what I read was that apparently his father was abusive to his mother, and some Hydra agent came to them and took them out of that home.
Yeah.
And helped him, and it's like, wait a minute, how does that even make sense? Why would Hydra be interested in a domestic violence case? how does that warrant their attention? Because one day he'd become Captain America.
Well, how would they know that?
He needed the super soldier serum. There's no way they could have known he would have been Captain America one day.
No, that doesn't make sense. Well, first off, there's a few problems with that. Yes, that's pretty much what happens. First of all, Captain America's father was not a wife beater. Captain America's parents were essentially they were the ideal parents. A child's values are typically learned from their parents. Captain America is the good man that he is because his parents were the good people that they were. This is the reason why Superman hasn't blown the planet up, because his parents are the ideal parents, you know, the Kents, right? They're very simple people, they're hardworking people, they have, you know, strong moral values, right? One, you could make the argument that they're American values or whatever. I guess that's okay, not to sound too nationalistic, or too much like a nationalist, but that's the point. That was the idea when those old Jews wrote that story. That was what they wanted to instill, right? So yeah, no, Captain America's dad was never a wife beater. But of course, this guy, Nick Spencer, he is a feminist social justice warrior. So in his mind, men beat their wives, except for him. Of course, the Hydra agent that comes along to save them is a woman, and she kicks his ass and tells him to go away, and then she swoops in and rescues them. Which I don't know why Hydra would take an interest in domestic violence disputes. That doesn't make sense. Plus, unless they're time traveling, which they could reveal later, unless they were able to time travel and see that that boy was going to become Captain America one day and cause them so much headache, I don't see why they would take an interest in him. He doesn't even become Cap until both of his parents die. Like his dad dies in World War I, because again he went to go to fight to defend his country, and his mom dies in early World War II for the same reasons. She goes and she's like a nurse or something in a maternity ward, and it gets bombed or hit or something. So this is where his values come from, and that's why he tries so hard to join the army, because he wants to do his part. So that whole thing doesn't make any sense.
And you know, you bring up a very interesting point, and this is what I was saying right at the beginning. They're trying to destroy Captain America.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to take a different turn with our conversation, because we're coming near the end of the first hour. I am so super angry about this, and I want to go into a brief explanation as to why I'm so livid about this. Because as I said, I'm not a comic book fan, but I love the stories. And Captain America represented everything that was great about America when it first came out. And every American knew that we should be in World War II. We should be fighting the good fight. Now, it would be a few years before America actually entered in the war, but Captain America was over there fighting. And yes, it was a fictional character, but it was a character that boys specifically, but some girls, I'm sure there were girls back then.
Oh, sure.
But people to like say, yeah, Captain's beating up Hitler, you know, it was a symbol of America.
But it's also, I just want to throw in there, it's also important to point out that the reason why there was a Captain America and a Superman, because these things are both coming from the same place. The guys who were making these books were Jews that saw what was happening and wanted to say something. The guys who designed Cap and Superman were Jewish men, and they wanted to talk about what was going on, but they couldn't themselves go to war. So this is their way of contributing.
And they did a very important thing, I think. Now, I'm not going to say that Captain America was the reason why we entered into the war, but at least it raised awareness of what was going on in World War II. And You know, and for 75 years we've had Captain America. Captain America. I mean, he is for America. And
Mhm.
his popularity has gone up and down. It has waned. I mean, one of the things that many writers have talked about is like they start kind of running out of ideas for Captain America. Like when World War II ended, you know, they kind of like, okay, what do we do with Captain now? There's no more Nazis, you know, and they tried doing a couple of things, but finally they decided to make him a hero in America. And then, of course, there was the Avengers and all of that. But, I mean, he is a symbol. He's one of the greatest symbols of our country. One that has survived to the point that we're making a movie about him. And we've made movies about him before, but this is a blockbuster film. It is a highly popular series. I didn't like the first Captain America movie, but it wasn't that bad. Then there was The Winter Soldier, which was very cool. And now this newest one. I mean, he is ingrained into our society, much like Star Trek is ingrained in our society.
Yeah.
And, you know, I really hate the new Star Trek films. I don't really hate them, but I dislike them because I feel like they're taking away from what Star Trek was. I mean, leave it to Justin Lin, the Fast and Furious director, to put a fucking motorcycle in the Star Trek film. Rah! I'm not talking about the first one. I'm talking about the newest one. Check
Right,
out
the third one, because the first two were Abrams films.
But these things are ingrained, and now it's like social justice warriors are wanting to destroy anything that is masculine, and they're going after one of our greatest symbols of not just masculinity, but of what made America America. Back in World War II, when men were men and women were women, and, you know, men went off and fought in the war. I mean, it's tragic that they did, but they did do it. You know, we were fighting the good fight, and women were taking their place in the workforce to keep this country running. And Captain America represents all of that, and now there's just this need, this great need to destroy what we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I felt when I learned about this. That it's like, why do you want to destroy our history? Why do you want to destroy our culture? Sorry to go off on a rant there.
No, it's okay. I wanted to tell you why I talked about Sam Wilson as Cap for a while. This is leading up to why I think Cap is Hydra. I think these things. I don't think this is an accident. I think these things are connected. When it turned out that we had a black Captain America, people could smell the pandering, and they talked at length about it, and they debated it and all that. And people at Marvel, like Nick Spencer, started to write in these straw man characters of like racist white dudes talking about how Sam Wilson is not my Captain America or whatever, and essentially trying to construct this narrative that anybody who is against Sam Wilson as Cap is a fascist and a racist and a bad person, right? So none of that was sticking. People were still saying, you know what, you don't get where I'm coming from. We just know that this is not. These are our reasons, that it doesn't work, right? And I've already expressed all that, dealing with the idea of sidekicks and all that shit. So what do? Okay, so they bring him back. Okay, we're going to bring back Steve Rogers. Now we have Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson, and they're both Captain America. But the white guy, he's evil. He was always a bad guy. Essentially, they are taking the original Steve Rogers Captain America and making him into a Hydra agent so that it justifies what they have done with the Sam Wilson one. Of course, they're also building up to another Civil War, a Civil War II in the comics, and I have a feeling, I'm just making a prediction right now, I have a feeling that the new Civil War is going to be a reflection of the culture war that's going on right now between social justice warriors and their belief that their addiction to identity politics is more important than essentially what a lot of people would call classical liberalism or cultural libertarianism or whatever you want to call it. But the idea of not forcing this shit on down people's throats, because it does not magically make your bad writing better when you make these arbitrary changes. And it does piss people off because there are central core things. Have you seen all the memes of Captain America? It's like the Captain America Hail Hydra meme where they just change the character to somebody else and they have him saying something completely antithetical to what they are. Like Spider-Man is like, fuck responsibility. Yeah. Daredevil is like, I could see the entire time. This is what I'm talking about. Like, if you do that, it's not just a little twist. You're really fucking it up. By the way, I wanted to throw something else in there and this doesn't have to be about Marvel. Like, this is just sort of like, this is a broader thing than that. Like, this doesn't encompass just the Marvel comics. It's obviously going on in DC and other places. But as a principle, this is something this is why people are using these memes, because as a principle, it's a bad idea. But, first of all, I want to say, Marvel can do whatever they want, if that's what they really want to do. I'm not going to stop them. I'm not going to tell them they can't do that. I think that the sales will reflect whether or not it's a good idea. And the fact that nobody likes this, even Chris Evans was like, say it ain't so, when he saw it. Chris Evans plays Captain America, and he was like, that doesn't make sense. We will see what the sales numbers say. But I was speaking to someone who wants to remain anonymous. After I did our art stream last Saturday, I had a guest come on after the art stream was over. And this person is a director of publishing at a major comic book company, like a really big one. But he wants to remain anonymous for reasons that I can get into if you want later. But it's essentially dealing with the fact that all this social justice shit is rife within the industry, and if he's afraid that if people find out who he is, that his career could be in danger. But he told me with certainty that it's not that Marvel Comics as a company wants to push this stuff in. It really is, you're looking at the effects of two forces, okay? And that's why this is happening. One, Marvel as a comic book publishing group is trying to, they're basically opening up their, trying to basically shake up sales, right? They're trying to improve their sales. So they're trying new things. They're open to trying new things, but they don't necessarily believe in any of the shit that people are doing. So that's one. They just want to improve sales. They're trying new stuff. And DC's doing it too. It's just a matter of who they're ending up with under their, that's actually making their products, right? So they're trying new things. They're trying to appeal to new audiences. And they're not actually interested in what it is. All they care about is their bottom line. That's what the company cares about. But the people who they have hired, like Nick Spencer, like these feminist writers that are doing Hellcat and Squirrel Girl and the Female Thor and Gail Simone and shit, these people have they're getting hired because Marvel thinks that they're what they could work, right? That they have something to offer. But these people are seeing this as an opportunity to push in their politics, to push in what they think people not just will want. They don't care about what people want. They think that this is a platform. This is their soapbox, and they're going to shove in their shit. And they don't care what happens to Marvel. I'm saying these people do not like comics. They don't read them. They don't know the characters. They don't care. They only care about putting their politics into the stories. And Marvel kind of they use contracts, right? So they have these people contracted to do a certain number of issues. They don't know what's going to happen. And DC works the same way. They have the same system. So what will ultimately happen is that Marvel will look at the numbers for the sales, and those people will not have a job. At least not with Marvel doing that kind of product anymore. So this is why I'm just throwing this in there, just so you know where it's coming from. So if you're going to point the finger, you could, if you could point the finger at Marvel and say you guys are dumb for hiring these people, and maybe not looking into what they're about. But at the end of the day, Marvel doesn't actually believe in any of this shit. They're just trying to sell comics. It's the writers and the artists, to a lesser extent, that are the ones that are actually pushing this shit. They're using it as a platform. So.
Well, and look what happened with the female Thor comic. Yeah, when it first came out, it sold a lot of issues.
Because people were curious.
Well, people were curious first and foremost, but social justice warriors were flocking to it. It's like, woohoo, we finally have a female superhero, which is bullshit, of course. But then as the comic, got into its run, people weren't buying it. And, of course, the comic book readers, the actual customers, were just not interested in all the social justice warrior bullshit. But it was the social justice warriors themselves, who were not really customers to begin with, were not interested.
Nope, they were not the customers.
And this is what happens when you try to cater to a market that is just not interested in comics whatsoever. Now, I can understand from a marketing standpoint trying to reach new customers. Everyone has done that. Even the new Star Trek films has tried to do that. Try to bring more people in. I remember one of the things I heard about Star Trek Beyond is they wanted Simon Pegg to write a Star Trek script that wasn't Star Trek. And I'm like, oh God, is that going to suck? I mean, I like Simon Pegg, but that's just a tall order to fill. But, they need to expand in order to stay relevant. So I can understand that from Marvel's end. And, yeah, they don't really know what they're going to be getting, but they're going to actually do very poor. Because the people who do buy the comics that has kept them afloat all these years are not going to stand for this bullshit, and it's just not going to buy it. And the people that they're trying to attract aren't going to buy comics to begin with.
No. Here's the thing that I don't get, though. I don't know that these risks, these sort of like sudden shifts to shake things up, are the best way to increase sales. I think, and you can look at the films for this, actually giving the audience what they, like essentially aiming for the audience that has always been there for the property, especially if it's a franchise or something that's been around forever, is the safest bet for that franchise. Because it seems weird to me that we're obsessed with trying to broaden our audience these days, when back in the, let's say, the 70s and 80s, when they made films or television shows or other properties, they just focused on what the central sort of mission statement of that film or property or TV show was, and then it just attracted an audience based on that. Like Star Trek, as to your example, Star Trek is not popular because the folks at Desilu, who essentially produced it, thought we need to make something that appeals to as many people as possible. Star Trek became popular because it focused like a laser on basically on a specific style of storytelling. They wanted to do science fiction, and they had very specific ways they wanted to do it. And yes, there were probably people that were like, I don't want to watch that. But the people who did became extremely loyal, and they stayed. And then when they did The Next Generation, you may have lost some people, but you gained a bunch of other people. It worked out. Now that they're trying to appeal to everybody, you're basically ending up with, you have a product that doesn't actually appeal to anybody. At least not in a way that they can actually stay committed to, right? Because you're trying to appeal to the ADD crowd that wants to see explosion. You can't make people who watch Fast and Furious watch Star Trek unless you make Star Trek Fast and Furious. And if you do that, you're not going to have Star Trek anymore. You're going to have Fast and Furious. So you're going to lose the people who like Star Trek.
Well, I'll give another example, because this has recently come up. It's like the newest X-Men film, Apocalypse.
Yeah.
There were many people who were overall disappointed because there was a lot of hype. I've been actually disappointed by all the X-Men films. First one was good, but it completely changed the story from what we were used to. I can sort of understand why, but, it wasn't done to the people who actually liked the comics, who grew up with it. I mean, I grew up with the cartoon, which was badass until the last season. You didn't appeal to them. You tried to appeal to a wide range of people. And then the second film, the third film, Origins, what have you, it was just trying to reach out a wide net as possible. Especially the third film sucked horribly. I mean, I fucking hate that film. But then we take a film like Deadpool. Deadpool was made for the people who like the comic. I mean, I won't say it's a comic book movie, as like I think they were trying to make Apocalypse to be like, but it was, this is the character. We're not changing anything about the character. We kind of have to do an origin story that's onto his own, which was the only deviation, but everything else was there. It was written for people who were the fans.
Yeah.
And it is the highest grossing R-rated film of all time.
Yeah, that's just it. It's not rocket science to just give the fans what they want. Like you would have to be pretty arrogant to think that if a fan base exists for a property, and it must be changed when adapted to film, because if there is a fan base already, that means that there's something about that property that is already attracted to those fans. They already love it. You already, like, that's the thing about adapting things like books and comics and stuff. They already have people who love it. So the work is half done. You don't have to try to introduce some new idea because you've already got the idea and you have the people who love the idea. So all you got to do is adapt it well and put it on the screen. That's it. That's all you got to do. But I think that there is a bit of arrogance in the folks that make film because they don't particularly like the original medium. Bryan Singer used to, in the first X-Men film, I liked the first two X-Men movies, but this is the reason. Back in those days, there was no Marvel Studios, right? So when someone made a comic book movie, the expectation that it wasn't going to be true to the original in every way was pretty much standard. Like, you just knew they weren't going to get it all right. You knew that there was things that they were going to not do at all. Like the idea that there would be a universe, built around it was like non-existent. Like, in the X-Men films, there was only mutants. There's no aliens. There's no dimensional beings. There's no magic. There's no other superheroes. No super soldier serum. No Spider-Man. None of that. Even though in the comics that all exists, but in the movies, there's just mutants. So that means that when you're going to introduce a Juggernaut, he's not going to be the Juggernaut from the books, because he gets his powers from magic and shit. He's going to be a mutant. That's just because they're working within those limitations. They're constructing that, right? So you have to allow, at least then, you made that allowance. When it wasn't until Marvel made their Marvel Cinematic Universe that whole thing was torn asunder. They just threw that all out the window, and they said, we're going to do whatever we want. We're going to build our universe as it is because we've been around for at least 50 years, and people already love us. So there's nothing to do except adapt what we've done that's worked on paper and put it to screen. So there is that. But if you watch the Bryan Singer X-Men 1, he actually shits on X-Men in the book, in his movie. He essentially makes jokes about the comics as he's making his film about the actual characters. It's almost like he knows in his mind that what he's doing is better than what comics writers have done. I think that there is the people who make films about movies that are not actually like involved with the comics, like the Marvel Studios is. They actually have a disdain for the comics medium. I think that they see it as like some ghetto medium or something that they don't like as much. And so, because they made it in film and they're hot shit, right? I think that's where that comes from. And the fact that Marvel as a studio is a lot more humble about it, and that doesn't mean that they don't stumble too, but I don't think that they dislike their properties. I think they actually really love their properties. And I also think that one of the reasons why Warner Brothers is having a hard time with the DC universe is the same. They also don't have a lot of love for their properties, despite the fact, oddly enough, Warner Brothers is owned, or Warner Brothers owns DC Comics. They literally have access to their entire universe of characters right off the bat. They don't have any problems with copyrights, right? But for whatever reason, they didn't think that doing a cinematic universe was a good idea until Marvel started raking in the billions. Then they were like, oh shit, we better get on that. But before that, they didn't want to do it. So they didn't really have, at least the Warner Brothers studio didn't have a lot of love for their property until it showed that the property could make some money. So.
Yeah, and I will certainly say that the MCU really took a risk for this, because it was almost unheard of to like do, what was it? Where are they up to, like 15, 20 films now?
Well, they have announced a bunch of movies.
Yeah, they're going to be doing so many, and no one in history has ever done that before. No one has.
You talking about DC or the Marvel universe?
What's up?
Are you talking about DC or Marvel right now?
Marvel.
Oh yeah, Marvel, yeah. No one. This is why it's so exciting. What they're doing has never been done before, and so my ass has been in the seat day one for every one of these movies, and overall, I'm very, very pleased with what they've done.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with what they've done. But I'm going to wrap up this segment and move on to our next one. So if there's anything you want to say real quick on this, feel free to do so. But let me start first, because it's fresh in my mind. So, and then Vanessa, you're soon up. The thing is with Captain America, I really feel like there's just this campaign to destroy what we love, and I think Nick Spencer is a virus. Now, they could try to turn around and it's like, ha, fooled you. It's not really that thing. We were just trying to piss you off to get you to buy comics. But even then, it's going to be a slap in the face. It's kind of like, watching this movie and all of these really horrible things happen, and then it's like the character wakes up and it was all a dream. Kind of like what happened in Dallas, that the character dying was all a dream, and it's like that's a big FU to everyone. So if they're going to do this, they need to stay committed to it. But I'm willing to bet they're going to pull some bullshit like that it's like, no, it's not what you actually think. We were just trying to piss you off.
I feel like they'll probably do that.
Yeah, I mean, my thinking is that they will. Well, because Marvel Studios is doing this in the hopes that it will, give them a bump in sales. And when it turns out it doesn't, then they're going to have to retcon it. I don't know that they're going to, I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for, an apology. But they're probably just going to be like, well, that was a bad idea. Let's go in another direction.
Like Highlander 2. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm not supposed to speak about Highlander 2.
We'll just pretend it didn't happen. It's essentially what they're going to do. You know what I think would be great is if they literally made it a bad dream and they have Steve wake up and he's like, oh my God, what the fuck? In a cold sweat. And Agent 13 rolls over and she's like, what happened, Steve? And he's like, I just had the worst nightmare that Nick Spencer was writing my comic.
But then wakes up next to him and is like, dude, I got to be up at 5 a.m. Go back to sleep.
But no, my final word is essentially Nick Spencer is a person who hates comics, hates comic readers, hates Captain America, probably hates America too, in some ways. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean to sound like. What I mean by that is there are people, social justice warriors, do not like America. They don't like the United States because they think that it's the root of all evil. And they learn that in academia. They've learned that in their colleges. They've learned that in school. So I understand where it comes from. But this is just what that is. This is just acting out because they don't like Captain America. They look at him and what they see is straight white male. You're a fucking white male. That's what they see. You're a fucking white male. And that you have to be destroyed as a result of that. And you're not only are you a white male, but you are a white male that's wearing the flag. You are what's wrong with this country. So, and that's where people like Nick Spencer work from. That's why him writing the book and supposedly being politically active, he doesn't understand that Captain America does not actually represent the government of the United States. He does not represent its president. He does not represent a group of people. He represents the ideal. He represents the ideals of the country, like what it means, what it stands for. And those things do not have color, and they do not have gender, and they do not have sexuality. They are just ideas. That's all that is, and that's what he stands for. And but people like social justice warriors, like this guy, they don't have the capacity to see that. And it's really unfortunate that they're the ones that get to write these stories. And that's all I got to say about it.
And if I could play us off, I would probably do Hulk Hogan's theme, I'm a Real American. Because I've just been listening to that song a lot lately because of this whole thing.
It's a good song. I was thinking like Stan Bush's You Got the Touch, but yeah.
Anyway, but I can't play us off because we do have an article to read, and I invite you, Brian, to stay with us and talk about this real quick. Although I'm sure the Honey Badgers have either A, talked about it already or soon will, so consider this a preview for all you Honey Badger fans out there. Alright, let me go ahead and get the screen share going. And hello.
Oh my god! Who is that ugly-ass dog?
Don't say that about Vanessa.
Aww. Good one.
Sorry, couldn't resist. Alright, so hello to you, Celtic Rune Singer, Trisha Vega, and Warped Reflection. Let us get going with our article today, and Vanessa, will you go ahead and...
Oh my god, is that BuzzFeed?
Yes.
Of course it's BuzzFeed.
Oh boy, I better buckle up.
Excuse me. Alright. Let's see. I gotta click on your thingy. There we go.
Please click on my thingy.
Oh, shit. Oh god. Okay. This woman was expelled for allegedly sexually assaulting a man on campus. I've never seen a case like this, said an attorney. Alright. At the beginning of the second semester of her freshman year, Washington... Wait, there's a fucking arrow in the way. What the fuck is that thing?
Here.
Okay. Year at Washington State University in January 2014, Rose was playing drinking games with her new floormates. After she lost, she told BuzzFeed News she peeled off with a classmate she had kind of a crush on, and they had sex in her room.
Did she really lose at the game if she got fucked in the end?
According to BuzzFeed, yes.
Yeah.
If she didn't have sex, she was raped.
Now, you know, I don't mean to fat shame, but,
Is that her?
yeah.
Yeah, that's her.
Alright.
She's pretty from the ankles down.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
A few months later, she was expelled for sexual assault. Rose's situation is unique because she's a woman being accused by a man of sexual assault on campus. Apparently, they've never heard of this shit. My firm has done more than 70 of these cases, and I've talked to dozens more people, said Justin Dillon, an attorney who specializes in defending college students accused of sexual assaults. I have never seen a case like this. I guess he's only worked at that one campus and never seen, like, news or anything.
No, this is a unique case. I mean...
Yeah, this is the very first time. This has never happened before.
So, actually, she's been accused of sexual assault by a man, right?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And they're actually talking about it on the news and stuff? Actually, I think it is. It is a unique case. So people are talking about it. How does it feel? I think we should listen and believe the victim.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think he did. I think that he was raped. She looks like the type. Okay.
Okay. Do you want me to read all that, or did you want me to?
Actually, go with this paragraph right here.
17%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that these cases don't occur. Men account for around 17% of sexual victimizations of students. And survey data collected by the Association of American Universities shows that many of these men were assaulted by women. Men are much less likely to report sexual assaults to legal universities or to legal or university authorities than women, though they will report them on anonymous surveys.
God, I wonder why men are less likely to report.
But wait a minute.
Yeah, I wonder.
This is the case, and yet 17% of men are sexually assaulted. So maybe it's not as unique.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, but I'm sure that the numbers. I think the numbers for that are higher.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing.
I think that what typically the way it seems to go is that men at the, let's say in college, men are of the like highest, most desirable 10%, actually get the most sexual assault. So basically, it's sort of it's one of those things where, you know, like say you're a male stripper, or you're attractive enough, you're going to get more sexual assault from women than if you're like an average guy. So you may see a smaller percentage of men, but they will probably have a lot more encounters with a lot more women. Does that make sense?
Well, no, that makes perfect sense. It would be interesting to see an actual study on that. Not that I disbelieve you, wondering if there's any truth in it. Unfortunately, no such study will ever happen.
Well, it's hard, because I mean, there are studies that Karen has shown. I know it's on one of our videos specifically about male, like Chippendale dancers and stuff, that they have far more problems with women groping them on stage and trying to grab them and so on, even in environments where you're not supposed to touch the dancers, than female strippers do.
Yeah,
far more.
I remember that episode too.
Yeah.
But you know, I want to call attention to this paragraph here, the last part. Though they will report them on anonymous surveys. It's like that is a complete slap in the face to male victims right there. Oh, they won't report them to the police, but they'll report them on anonymous surveys. What about the fuck Keisha? She didn't report to the police and used her rape, and I'm using air quotes there, to try to get out of a contract with her record producer. Yeah, she reported to the police, but she managed to use it to get what she wanted. How fucking dare you judge these men for not reporting, but still, willing to talk about it on an anonymous survey? And they snuck it in there, but I really felt that last line right there was to say, yeah, they're not telling the truth. They're lying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you wonder why people don't come forward? It's that kind of attitude right there.
Yeah. And the thing about the strippers, I think that a lot of it probably happens because usually if it's not like a sleazy ass place, men get punished for touching women, but women usually don't get punished for touching men.
Oh, yeah.
Unless they're like, trying to literally grab their dick and, like just belligerently drunk, and they have to remove her just because she's,
yeah. Oh, and a lot of the time,
to someone. But
yeah, and a lot of the time, the male dancers or the male strippers that get groped and stuff, even and when they don't want to be, they don't complain as often. So they just. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't bother them, but they just don't. They assume that nothing's going to be done, and they just kind of get over it and move on. Whereas female strippers are more likely to be vocally, opposed And yeah, I
Yeah.
mean the strip joints that are, I guess, decent, like you were saying,
Yeah.
the bouncers will do more than just. I mean, they'll like it's bad. It's a bad idea to mess with the girls
Mhm.
there. They're
Yeah.
very very protective of their girls there. So
Yeah, I know anytime I've ever been in a strip club, it's like I respect the girls, but it's like I sit on my hands because I don't want to like even give the suggestion that I'm going to touch them. And I had one stripper give me a hug afterwards, and I wouldn't hug her back, and she's like, "You can put your arm around me," and I'm like, "Okay," and I just kind of did it nervously because not that I'm a bad person in any way, but it can be easily mistaken. And it's like my word
Yeah.
versus a woman's. No one's going to really take my word over a woman's, so I'm
Mhm.
just doing everything I can to make sure nothing could even be seen as impropriety.
actually,
Yeah.
in Chicago, at least I don't know if this is like how, because I know that laws differ from place to place, but in Chicago, the way that they do strip clubs is for girls, for strip clubs that feature women. If the strippers are completely naked, then they do not serve alcohol. So if the strippers strip down to nothing, there's no alcohol
Hmm.
involved. Or even if they're just stripping to yeah, if they strip down to nothing, there's no alcohol served in those places. So this is to avoid drunken, belligerence. Although it doesn't really stop guys from like showing up drunk, and it does happen. But they do have a very specific rule. So if there's going to be serving drinks, the girls don't get all the way naked. If they do serve drinks, the girls get to the point where they are wearing nothing except a thong and pasties, and that's it.
Yeah,
So
not
Hmm.
really
where they
worth
do
going to a
serve
strip
drinks, they
club
do that.
unless they get naked.
Yeah, but that
That's interesting.
rule,
I didn't know
that
that.
yeah, that's how it is. But that limitation does not apply at places where there are male strippers. So where
Hmm.
there are male strippers, girls can get as drunk as they want, and the guys they get undressed down to nothing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, going back to this story, because she apparently filed a countersuit. BuzzFeed doesn't cover this, but I saw another site that did. Here.
Oh.
Um, and the funny thing is she was trying to claim that she got raped, and she tried to pass this story off. And of course, the school took it seriously. But my one thought in this is, had she come forward first and claimed that she was raped, he most likely would have been expelled, even with all of the evidence, because yeah, and BuzzFeed really didn't cover this, but after they had sex, she wouldn't let him leave the room. Now I don't know how she stopped him from leaving the room, but she wouldn't let him leave. And there were people outside saying, "Hey, you got to let him leave. He wants to leave," and she wouldn't do it. Finally, he got out and went to someone else's room and actually hid in the closet when she came knocking on the doors, wanting to know where he went. And they told her, it's like, you got to be careful because this can be construed as rape. And she kind of laughed it off. But then it's like after she got accused of rape, she tried to say the same thing. Well, no, he raped me. And it's surprising that they took his side, but I'm willing to bet, despite the overwhelming evidence of everyone reporting what happened, had she been the first to report it, he would have been expelled.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Well, he might
Pretty
have been
much.
arrested. But
Actually, many men who have been expelled from campuses for rape have not been arrested.
really? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. There's a
Oftentimes, the police don't find any conclusive evidence.
yeah, but by that time it's too late, and that guy's life has been ruined.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's how they work. They there's like it's the difference between um, due process through the legal system and the mob rule or mob justice. In the mob justice, in universities is often the default. It's where they start from, and all it takes is for somebody to spread a rumor, or make the statement that something happened, whether it's true or not. But that person who is being accused, if a girl points her finger and says you did something and starts talking about it on college campus, you're done. I mean,
Yeah.
even if you're found innocent later, because the gears of justice they turn slow, right? It takes time to figure out what actually had happened, and by the time they have come to a conclusion, you've already lost. You're all expelled and you're shunned, and it could be worse. People will, if they think that you're a criminal or a bad person, you could become a victim of mob justice, lynchings essentially.
Now, I don't know if this girl was actually a rapist or not, or if it was just a misunderstanding. But you know what? She's now experiencing what men go through because her life is now destroyed. She tried applying to another college. I believe she said it was like the one next door or something. And they refused her application on the idea that she could have done it. And, I believe I think I saw something that she was like a scholarship student as well. And now her life is ruined. And I'm not exactly happy that her life specifically got ruined, but I'm happy that we're now seeing the shoe on the other foot. But the problem is that news media is only going to focus on, oh, she's a woman and she's being victimized and she's being treated unfairly, when this happens to me all the time. I would hope that this issue raise awareness of the problem in colleges, but it's not. No one's going to care about the truth, only what narrative they can paint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this entire article tries to pass her as the victim. And I think what happened was that this guy was probably too drunk and might have consented at first because he did go in the room with her, but then he obviously became very uncomfortable and didn't really want to go through with it, and she didn't like that. So that's what I think probably happened. I don't know specifically, all the details, but yeah.
But,
well, I mean,
go ahead,
go
Brian.
ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say. Well, I mean, if she's innocent, I hope that like you guys were saying, nothing untoward happens. Like, we don't have this case of mob justice and all that. However, that being said, if we're going to address the problems of kangaroo courts in colleges and Title IX and all this stuff where an accusation can be enough to destroy someone, and that we want to essentially stick to the principles put forward by due process, if we want people to become aware that that's very, very, very important, and that your speculations are meaningless in the eyes of our legal justice system, unfortunately, the only way that's going to happen, where people are going to start really taking that conversation seriously, is if a woman becomes a victim of that system. If a woman becomes a victim, then people are going to say, "Holy shit! I think we may have been doing this wrong, and we probably want to back out and make a change."
And you know what? That's actually already happened. Not in this particular case, but with the draft, with selective service. Because now women are admitted to the front line, which I have no problem with, so long as they can meet the same standards as men, which they don't. Most of them don't. But now, because they can be on the front line, the House wants to pass a bill that makes them sign up for selective service and potentially be part of the draft. Well, now that women could be a part of the draft, now feminists want to do away with the draft.
Yep.
Like, for 100 years, men have had the requirement that in order to vote, they had to sign up for selective service, and AKA the draft. But now that it's a woman's problem, now feminism is interested.
Yep. Now
And
they're
same with the
speaking up.
divorce custody shit that we covered a couple weeks ago, where women are getting angry because, men are starting to get not even equal custody, but like 3 out of 4 days, or 3 out of 7, I mean,
Yeah.
with their children. So.
Yeah.
That
Are
that's-
losing their power.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. Like, once you see real equality in action, or at least something resembling it, and you see a woman in a position where she has to actually deal with the obligations and responsibilities that men collectively had to for hundreds of years or more, suddenly people are going, wow, we probably want to look closer. That might be messed up. I don't know. That's probably not a good idea. We probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a good thing, but it's actually kind of depressing because, men could have been saying for decades. I'm always reminded that people always think that today, this generation, this time that we're alive now, people who want to see change, or who want to address problems, or want to talk about things like inequalities or politics or global, affairs, they think that, or they seem to forget sometimes, that these conversations that we're having now about this stuff have been happening for generations and generations and generations and generations upon millennia, okay? But they think, and there's a bit of arrogance in it, they believe that this generation, everything's going to change. Now, we know what we're doing, and now we're going to get it right. And we're considering angles and ideas that no one had ever considered before. And I think that is a very pompous approach, and to not consider that people have had these discussions many times before, that there have been MRAs in the past. They probably didn't call themselves that, but they existed. There have been discussions about the differences between liberty and security. There have been discussions about philosophy and all these other ideas that have been going on for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. If you can stop and tell yourself these conversations have happened before, I think that actually it would help to improve one's perspective in terms of what changes should happen in the future. So, and I said all that because this whole thing about when women start dealing with the problems that men have, it makes people ask and stop and think about those problems in the first place. Still makes me sad because I don't think this is new. I don't think these are new conversations. I just think that people forget that they've happened before. And it shows how easily we can slip back into regressive attitudes,
Yeah, and that's probably going to be the scariest thing. Things are going to get worse before they get better, but we are starting to see things happening. I mean, the talk that I'm seeing now from a lot of people is that people are starting to wake up to the bullshit of feminism. People are starting to see what feminism actually is, and they're starting to stand up. I mean, we had the whole issue with Notch, just basically he was trolling feminists and was able to put them in their place. But people are seeing this, and it's like, well, why are they attacking this guy, or what's going on here? He created Minecraft, and very soon feminists is just going to start attacking everyone they possibly can, and they're going to no longer have a platform to stand on. But before that happens, they're going to try to do everything they can, and this Captain America issue is just one example of that. They want to destroy man.
And the Ghostbusters.
And the Ghostbusters as well. They want to destroy man. By
Well, they
saying
don't.
that women
Yeah.
can do it better.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is something I brought up in the show that we're gonna upload on Wednesday. About comics and movies and all that have featured men, like that's as an example. Die Hard, Ghostbusters, Terminator, RoboCop, any number of male-centered superhero comics or TV shows about cops or whatever. How many can you think of off the top of your head, characters, have done anything or stated in their mission statement or the reason why they do what they do has something to do with doing it for men specifically? How many men or male-centered films exist specifically for men, like where the men in it are saying, we're doing this because men?
Never.
No, it never
I
happens.
can't think of anything.
You couldn't do it. But not only that, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because men, those male-centered stories, not even male-centered, but those stories that happen to feature male characters or male protagonists, they don't, the people who watch that or enjoy that do not do that because there is a man there. They do it because the stories are good. It just so happens that there is a man there. And there are some that do the same thing with female characters, but most of the time, when people write these female-centered ones, they think that the fact that it's a woman has to be front and center, and it actually diminishes what you're looking at. Or if it's a black man, it has to be the fact that he's black, that has to be front and center. Or the fact that he's gay has to be front and center, or whatever it is. You are actually alienating people when you do it, and you are not. You're actually doing your product a disservice because you're going to hurt how good it could be. You know, I have a rule that I like to go by when it comes to making fiction, or when I come up with ideas. I call it the Blade principle. Okay, the movie Blade, starring Wesley Snipes. You guys ever seen it?
Fantastic film.
He hunts vampires. Okay. If you watch the movie Blade, the central character is a black guy. There is absolutely no point in the film, one time, not once, does it come up that the reason why he's doing it is because he's black. His race is completely irrelevant to the story. Completely. It's got nothing to do with it. It doesn't come up at all. Not in the first one. In the second one, they do a little bit, but I wish they didn't because I think that they missed it. The point of the first one is that it doesn't matter. Blade could have been anybody. It doesn't come up. And that's actually stories that feature white protagonists work the same way. The fact that they're white never comes up because it's not about that. There are no white people saying, I am proud of this because there's a white guy in it. Or I'm proud of this because there's a woman in it, or whatever. They just enjoy it for what it is. So when you bring in identity politics, you are hurting your product because you're limiting. You're already telling people this is not for you, for one, and you're also limiting what you can do with it. And I want to encourage people, not necessarily to not put in, gay characters or females or whatever. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm saying that if you do, try to give them more than that. Make them interesting aside from that, and make their actions should be the center of what people admire, what they stand for, what they believe, etc.
Well, I just want to make a comment to that, and then we'll get going. It's like the whole thing with Dumbledore. I mean, the fact that J.K. Rowling said, I always thought he was gay, and so many people got angry that was never mentioned in any of the books or the movies. And, I was told that it's like, well, it's important because then people would have felt like they got represented. And it's like, why is someone's sexuality the only point of how people can connect to a character? I could connect to Blade. He's a black man. I'm a white man. I could connect to him. I could feel his pain. I could understand something he might be going through. Because our lives are not defined by the labels that we associate, but the situations and the actions and the decisions we make in our lives. But when it comes to fiction, my general rule is, one, don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit. If the gender or sexuality or even the race of your character doesn't really matter what they are, roll the dice, try something different to change it up a little bit. But at the same time, don't put a character in there just to say that you're being inclusive, that you're trying to paint a certain narrative or trying to show that, hey, I'm not racist because I have a black guy in my book. There is also the point of, if it's necessary for your character to be a certain race, a certain gender, a certain sexuality, go for it. But don't make that their only characteristic. And much like what you're saying, Brian. But, it's like I have a character in my book, Dagar Legacy, who's actually Middle Eastern. He has dark skin, green eyes, or olive green eyes. He had to be that race for how I set him up. And while I did describe what he looked like, he wasn't doing what he was doing for his people. He was just doing what he needed for the story. So,
yeah.
Do you remember that one character from Dexter, the tall, grayish guy who turned out to have a lover who died, and he was like trying to get vengeance or whatever because Dexter killed him? But like the entire time, we had no idea that he was gay because he was like a masculine. I don't know if he was an assassin or what, or drug lord or something like that. But yeah, and then we found out that he was upset because he had a lover, and we found out that he was actually really sensitive, and that was the part that was kind of cool. Not that he was gay, but that he had such a strong love for this person, and that's just one example that I remember.
Isaac Serco?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad one of us has seen Dexter, because I never have.
I've seen a little bit of it.
Oh, damn. I thought maybe you had, but yeah. I love that show.
Yeah, it's also in The Last of Us. There's a really, really, really good example of doing a gay man right. But I don't want to kill more of your time. But there's a section where you help this guy. This guy helps you. He guides you through this area, and he's hardcore. He's a little bit crazy. He kills zombies like everybody else. He's just rough and tumble, and you learn that he had a partner that you don't even know it's romantic. He just says partner, in a really sort of specific way. And then at the end, you learn the partner was a dude, and it's sort of like, oh, that was basically that was the way, and that's really the reaction it should be. It should be like, oh, all right, well, it's a guy, all right, I get it. He was gay. That's cool. That was my feeling. So.
Kind of like the end of Dodgeball when what's-her-face is starting to make out with the girl, and it's like, I told you she was a lesbian, and it's like, huh, I guess you're right. It's like, I'm not a lesbian, I'm bisexual. So
apparently a lot of people think that I'm a lesbian.
Like a really good actress.
I got a comment the other day saying, like, well, I think you're going to get over this lesbian thing.
Girl, I mean, I'm sure that had something to do with it.
I mean, yeah. I don't care. It's like, oh, I mean, I'm not a lesbian, but cool.
Well, and that's going to have to be a discussion for another time about, how it's kind of all or nothing. Either you're gay or you're straight, and there is no in-between, even though the LGBT, one of the letters is bisexual, and yet even within LGBT, a character either has to be gay or straight, But that's going to do it for us today. Thank you, everyone, for coming out to BDSM number 2. And we should be here next week, probably Monday, but just stay tuned to follow our Twitters, Vanessa with Cheese and GGMad_cat. We will post when the next show will be. Brian, I thank you so much for appearing on our show. I know Vanessa was super excited about having you here, and it's been forever since you've been on my channel, so it's always a great pleasure to have you.
Sure, no problem. And I was glad to be here, and I'm sorry that it's been so long. I've been working with Honey Badger Radio behind the scenes, and it's a lot of work. I actually have to get right back to it when we're done here. But thanks for having me. It was good to like get on and like sort of, cut loose a little bit. So.
Well, don't forget, I was a honey badger, so I kind of know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But, yes, thank you for that. Vanessa, any last things you want to say, since as a patriarchy, we prevented you from talking most of the show?
Yeah, you fucking shitlords. But, yeah, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, Modern Medusa, and, the Twitter, and then there's also, I have a Facebook page, one for my YouTube, Modern Medusa, and then Vanessa's Custom Art, where I sell art and shit, so yeah, check that out. And thanks for watching, bitches.
One other thing, too, if you listen to Honey Badger Radio, and if you're talking about it on your own channels or whatever, we're really grateful, and you guys are all Badgers. Everybody who listens, everybody who's talking about this stuff, they're all Badgers. So,
hell yeah.
That's how we see it.
Sweet.
All right, so that's going to do it for us today. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and see you next time. Oh, great, everything's frozen.